Welcome back to For Goodness Sake, where as a former Mormon, I take a look at the good things that I carry with me into my new, more secular worldview. Today's topic is evidence and confidence in evidence. The big question is, what can we believe? How can we have confidence in something when it's presented to us? I believed in evidence as a Mormon. As a matter of fact, something that we talk a lot about in Mormonism is the law of witnesses, where we say that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established, which is also biblical. But are witnesses good evidence? They're certainly a form of evidence, and they're better than nothing. I think the clearest example of how we talk about evidence within Mormonism is the Book of Mormon, and how we talk about how do we know that it's true. I would say there's basically 2 forms of evidence that we talk about quite a bit. And the first is, like I say, the law of witnesses, right? We have the 3 witnesses, the 8 witnesses. For those who might not know, when Joseph Smith allegedly had these golden plates and was translating the record off of them, the angel apparently told him he was not allowed to show them to anyone. He kept them completely hidden from all of his closest associates, his wife, his family. But he did on one singular occasion show them to 3 other people, sort of, and on one other occasion showed them to 8 people. And so those are the witness statements that are at the beginning of every copy of the Book of Mormon. And like I say, it's better than nothing. It's okay evidence to have some witnesses look at it and say, yeah, then we see it too. I could do a whole video just talking about the issues with those witness statements, but in any case, my point here is just that witnesses are important in Mormonism. The other really important, even more central piece of evidence is the witness of the Spirit. We talk about it all the time. I pray, I feel it, and if you want to look it up, it's right there in the Book of Mormon in Moroni 10, where it talks about ask God, right? And he will make it known to you in your heart. You'll know in your heart and in your mind that it's real. So those are the 2 pieces of evidence that I think we mostly rest on when we talk about, is this really true? Witnesses, and then our own personal witness from basically our feelings and our thoughts. So the question is, are those good evidence? Are those really a solid foundation for evidence that affects so many things in our lives? So as a counterpoint to this idea of trusting witnesses, I want to talk about just one of my absolute favorite mottos that I've ever read about. The Royal Society was founded hundreds of years ago during the Enlightenment era, and they chose as their motto, "En nullius verba," which I think is just amazing. It's such a great motto, and it's still the motto of the Royal Society today. En nullius verba basically means on the word of no one, or nothing on someone's word. Basically just saying, I'm not going to take your word for it. Show me the actual evidence. Don't just tell me. I'm not going to believe you. Show me the evidence that you have. Then I might be convinced. Kind of reminds me of the unofficial state motto for the state of Missouri. They're the show me state. Show me the evidence. And I really, really love this. Why would we say that? Why would we say that we don't trust people? Honestly, I think it relates to another concept within Mormonism where we say, trust not in the arm of flesh. Why would we say that? Well, because you can't really trust people. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously I love people, but people are fallible and people are prone to not only mistakes, but also twisted motivations where they may be interested in something other than the truth. So what does actually make for good evidence that we can have strong confidence in? I don't think there's any one dividing line that says, oh, this is good evidence, this is bad evidence. It's all just evidence. It's all one big spectrum of evidence. But I do think that there's a confident side of the spectrum and a not confident side of the spectrum. And there are indicators that help us to place the evidence further towards the confident side or further towards the low confidence side. This is just my own informal list of things that I believe indicate we should put stronger confidence or less confidence in a given piece of evidence. Direct versus indirect. If I have direct personal experience with something, I touch it, I see it, I experience it, I have higher confidence. If I hear about it from someone else, I have indirect experience, I have lower confidence. Physical versus metaphysical. If I hear about evidence which is something that is a piece of rock or a solid piece of evidence that's physical, I'm going to have higher confidence versus somebody who tells me about a ghost that they saw. That's metaphysical. I'm going to put less confidence in that. Repeatable evidence that I can see over and over. I can do an experiment and anyone could do it. I'm going to place higher confidence in that evidence versus unique or one-time evidence, which unfortunately most of history falls into because it already happened. We can't really access it again to make it happen in a repeatable way, but that's just the way it is. Anything that comes from history, I'm going to place in a lower confidence category. High numbers versus low numbers. If I have a huge body of evidence versus one singular piece that indicates a certain thing, I'm going to have higher confidence if it's abundant. Lots of pieces of evidence versus one or two or few evidence. How open and available is the evidence? Is it there for all to see and anybody can ask for it and see it and experience it or observe it? Or is it hidden and secret and behind a shroud, kept under lock and key, only a few can see it and then they tell us about it? I'm going to put higher confidence in the open, available evidence versus the hidden or secret evidence. Current evidence that is available now or very recently that we have good records of versus ancient evidence. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, all evidence becomes harder and harder to rely on. So again, current stuff I'm going to put in a higher category of confidence than ancient stuff. And then finally, the last one I have is just to say observable evidence versus theoretical evidence. And a lot of theoretical physics, for example, falls into this category. All of Einstein's work was theoretical physics, by the way. And we had less confidence in it until we were able to find observable evidence that backed up the theory. That's when we were able to put more confidence. So something that's observable is always going to have better confidence than something that's theoretical. And as long as I'm talking about Einstein, I may as well point out that just because something falls into the lower confidence category doesn't mean it's false, right? Things can very much be true even if the evidence for them is in the lower confidence category. But we're always going to be looking for that higher confidence evidence wherever we can find it. I've heard the argument that, hey, we have just as much evidence or maybe more evidence for Jesus Christ and what he did versus other historical figures, like let's say Plato or Aristotle. And my response to that is to say, yeah, maybe, but there's a second half to this equation. First, we need to have confidence based on good evidence, high confidence evidence. And then secondly, we can translate that into demands or impacts on our lives. So in other words, what impact does it have on my life if we were to somehow uncover new evidence that says Plato was never really a real person? That has almost no impact on my life. I mean, all right, interesting. Maybe I think about Plato and his ideas in a slightly different way, but there's no demands being placed on my life. Whereas if we were to uncover evidence that, definitively proves that Jesus was not actually the Son of God or did not actually, rise from the dead, wow, right? That changes everything. Now all of these demands that have been placed on my life through the philosophy and religion of Christianity no longer have force. So my only point in saying that is the bar that Christianity needs to clear is much, much higher than the bar that, Plato or some other ancient figure needs to clear, just because the demand, the practical impact in my life is so much higher. So to just wrap things up, let's place our confidence and make our important life decisions based on evidence in the high confidence categories as much as absolutely possible. And wherever the evidence falls, for whatever proposition we put confidence in, let us always be seeking out evidence that gives us more and more confidence and evaluating it fairly against all evidence that we find, trying to avoid confirmation bias. And as we base our lives on stronger evidence, we will be doing good for goodness sake.